Less than an hour from the campsite I stayed at last night. And there it is. That's the end of the 100-mile wilderness. Finished it in technically less than 4 days because I'm finishing it at 8 a.m. and I started it at 9:30. Last road walk on the AT. I've been seeing 2 hikers far ahead of me, kind of hard to see who they are. I know that I camped with 2 others at the shelter who are doing the same thing as me today, walking to the last shelter on the AT, which is inside the state park. So the deal with campgrounds around here is that thru hikers really only have one opportunity to camp inside Baxter State Park without really booking pretty far ahead and paying a fair amount, which is the Birch's campsite and shelter, which is technically the last shelter on the AT. But there's only about 11 spaces for thru hikers every night there, so people need to kind of get in. I think I'll definitely get a space though. That's Katahdin. Closer than ever now. Just ran into a southbounder named Rib. So they still exist. Woohoo! Okay, let's go. So I had a 4-hour talk with a ridge runner and now it's like 2 p.m. and I'm finally heading to the campsite. Doesn't really matter because this trail is so ridiculously easy. I'm gonna be there in less than 3 hours. Life is great. I'm so happy I took such a short day today. This trail is great and it kind of feels like walking back in Australia. In Australia, in a lot of these national parks and forests, you typically have a trail like this, trail that wasn't built by volunteers, trail that was actually built by professional trail crews. And it's much smoother than anything in the 100-mile wilderness. It's much easier than almost anything on the AT. I think this will end up being some of the easiest 9 miles of the entire AT, which is really great for prepping for Katahdin. Sorry, there's a fly in my hair. Which is really great for prepping for Katahdin. And just a really nice deep breath almost before tackling the mountain. I've been meeting so many day hikers in the last few hours, and I have to say, day hikers smell amazing. That's Katahdin. So close now. Of all the bog bridges I've crossed, I think this is one of the most impressive I've seen. I've had maybe 2 or 3 layers of stacking, but not this much. Here at the ranger station, just about to do a bit of a register for my hike and for the campground. Look at how far I've made it. Still a long while to go, but it's great to see this stuff. Katahdin, here I come tomorrow. Leaving the Birches at 4:50. You can see that, well, maybe you can see that it does have 2 of these smaller shelters. There's 2 other northbounders climbing the mountain from this campsite, and there's also 2 other northbounders who are just climbing it from other campsites. So that's pretty cool as well. I feel energetic. I've had a really good night's sleep for once. There were no bugs, no mosquitoes because it was so cold. So it turns out I'm swimming with a pretty fast bubble, which makes a lot of sense because if you're doing the trail at a normal speed, which is about 6 months, then you would have to start in January, which is of course not very popular. So I'm hiking with a pretty fast group. There's Clover, who is staying at another campsite, and she skipped ahead, so the summit date doesn't really matter for her. There is Happy, who summited Springer on the same day I did. I met her on Springer Mountain. But she started on the March the 22nd, so she started walking that day. I held off for one day. I stayed in the shelter. So I started walking on the 23rd, which means I have beat her. Not sure you remember the vlog I was talking about her, but I was hoping to have summited a little faster than she did, and it seems like I will. And then you have Porky, who has done the whole thing in just under 3 months. I believe he started on April the 20-something, which is absolutely insane. And then you also have Flash, who is quite fast as well. He started early March, so 4.5 months. And I am going to be summiting with a time of 119 days, which I'm pretty happy with. My goal was 120. I'm summiting in 119. Hell yeah. I got the Baxter Summit tag. The number on mine was 113. At the state park campground, they have all these shelters. Basically, well, they look like AT shelters, don't they? You just basically have an AT shelter all for yourself. When you're staying at one of these, probably still doesn't make it worth the price. I imagine these things are pretty expensive. About 5 kilometers, maybe less to go, and I still haven't done anything harder than a staircase. Elevation wise, I'm just over halfway up. Still haven't used my hands that much. This is definitely still easier than pretty much any climb I've done in the Whites, but I'm told it's gonna get tougher. Okay, now it's starting to get a bit harder. Lots of opposing pushing up these rocks. I haven't been using my trekking poles nearly as much. Eventually I'm gonna have to stow them, I think. It's getting really exciting. That's the tree line I just reached. God damn! Yeah, now I definitely have to stow my trekking poles. I'm telling you, this scenery is world class. Look at that! This is amazing. Look at that. Climbing. This gets a little crazy, but it's not as hard as Mahoosuc Notch, and the rocks are really grippy. Look at that view though. Gotta say, chimney climbing isn't any easier with a full pack. Check this out. I need to leave myself up onto this foot, which is on this foothold, but it's kind of hard to just using this edge, but I found another way. Nice hand jam, nice little hand jam. Almost finished with the scramble portion of this hike. I think the start and end were a bit Mahoosuc Notch-esque, but most of it was fine. Better than fine, actually. It was totally epic. Onto the plateau. Pretty different world up here. That's it. That's the sign. I'm not going to finish my journey there, of course. I still have 700 miles to go to Gaspé in Quebec. But that's going to be the end of a long, long trail. The views are amazing, of course. course they are.
Dude, you fucking made it! Dude! Holy fuck!
I've summited at, I believe, 8:07 a.m., which means that I've finished the AT in 119 calendar days, 118 actual days. Just gonna swing my poles around. I don't know what looks cool. I made it! Made it to Katahdin. Goddamn, finally. Took a while. Alright, that's good. So that's knife edge. Pretty dramatic stuff. I think that's what I'm gonna do next to get off the mountain. Go to that peak, go down the other side. If you see that lake behind the peak, I think I might try and go around that. Porky took my summit photo and now we're doing knife's edge. Should be a pretty slow mile, but a fun one. How about this for a view? Knife edge. This has not been too different from Mount Madison back on the presidential range, but it's a lot cooler than Mount Madison. I've done most of the juicy bit of the knife's edge now. Lots of day hikers out here at this point. Just gotta descend and then gotta climb. There's the knife edge. That was pretty straightforward. I think I did some slightly tougher sections of the AT, but those two guys were easy. That's Baxter Peak. And that's everything else. Heading down the Helen Taylor Trail to get to the campsite on the other side, where I will continue my hike by getting to the International Appalachian Trail. Back near the tree line again, and the views are still freaking epic. If you see that range that's across the lake right there, I think I'm gonna climb that next. So, you know, the journey ahead is still weighing on my mind. The cliffs just keep coming. All the way up there, up that ridge, all the way down there. Made it across the mountain. So I finished the Appalachian Trail, that was big. The Knife Edge Trail, and then also the Helen Taylor Trail to get here on the other side of Katahdin. My initial thoughts on Katahdin: I think the very start of Katahdin and the very end, like the trails up and down, were a lot like the ones in the Whites. They felt somewhat more secure, somewhat maybe easier, still quite technical scrambling. Lots of fun though, great views all the way. And that was just above the tree line. Below the tree line, those trails were pretty straightforward. And then as for the Knife Edge, it was a lot like the descent of Madison on the presidential range, which a lot of people say is one of the toughest or the toughest part of the entire Appalachian Trail. So quite tough, lots of boulders to walk over. And then you had a couple of climbs, like two sheer cliffs at the end, which might have been more technical than possibly anything else on the Appalachian Trail. So it was a real adventure going up and down. And possibly the best mountain I've done on the whole AT. Back at the campsite at the Birches last night, the two Nobos and I were playing a game which I will politely call Kiss, Marry, Kill, except it was just the Appalachian Trail states. So I think I said I would kiss North Carolina, Tennessee, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire. That might be it. Maybe West Virginia as well. And then I think I would say I would marry Maryland and Maine. And I might have said I would kill everything else. And then also kiss Alabama, kill Florida. I kind of feel like I'm free from the shackles now. I sort of feel like I've been tied to the AT because it has such a history, it's such a well-defined trail that I sort of felt like following it the entire way through, not taking any blue blazes. And that sort of made me feel a bit trapped. But now I'm on the IAT, which is a bit more loosely defined. I sort of feel like taking more side quests, doing more side adventures, having a bit more fun, and not being so trapped on the trail, which is very liberating. I also kind of miss roadwalks like this. The AT very impressively dodges roadwalks. I think of its entire length, there might be only about 20 or 30 miles of roadwalk total. And those miles are completely necessary to pass through important towns like Damascus, or to cross bridges like in Hanover or Hot Springs, or, you know, go over highways. So this is a kind of terrain I haven't actually walked on very much, and I'm happy for it. I mean, I'm happy for getting back on a road like this. Sometimes the trail can kind of wear on you. Katahdin Lake Trail. Really nice trail, really straightforward one. The final stretch of this trail is a bit overgrown, clearly less used than any of the other trails I've seen in this park. But it's not really an issue. This trail is still a bit better maintained than some parts of the Appalachian Trail, so no problem. So I just reached the kind of spooky, overgrown, abandoned Katahdin Wilderness Camp. There's no one here. I just walked in on the clearest path, the only one that's shown on the map that goes to this camp. And that's what that path looks like, just completely overgrown. Basically nothing of it left. And we have these really fascinating locked buildings, like that one and that one. Kind of strange. This is the kind of experience that the AT never gives you, just being in this bizarre, abandoned wilderness camp that seems to just be completely forgotten about. The trail is disappearing, the camp is disappearing. Feels like this place has just been completely abandoned for a very long time. So now it's time to try and figure out where I'm going. There is a trail, I'm told, that goes from here to the park boundary, but it's not on any maps. And I think the Baxter State Park tries to hide its existence. I located the track with the use of some far out comments. It's a bit overgrown, to be sure. Lots of these pretty prickly plants. Don't think it's gonna be like this all the time, though. It's very, very hidden. If someone else didn't tell me where this was, I wouldn't have found it. But that's the first blue blaze on that tree over there, so I'll just follow them best I can. It's less like a trail here, more like the remnants of a very old road. Here it's pretty easy to follow, but in some places when this thing goes through open meadows, I kind of have to use a bit of attentiveness. So there are clear signs this used to be a trail, not just a road, which this definitely used to be, but even a trail. So you can see this tread, which is actually pretty clear at foot level, but just not really at, you know, knee or hip level. So this must have been an official trail at some point, but just kind of disappeared into this once it was removed off all maps. Leaving Baxter State Park right now. successfully escaped. So now it's just a pretty straight shot, I think, to the terminus of the International Appalachian Trail. This trail is getting better and better, and it should be leading me pretty much right there. It's nothing official, but that's the southern terminus of the International Appalachian Trail. This sign right here. So, I've done many trails. I've done the Overseas Heritage Trail, the Everglades Connector, the Florida Trail, the Blackwater Connector, the Alabama Road Walk, the Coosa Trail, the Florida Trail, not the Florida Trail, the Pinhoti Trail, the Georgia section of the Benton McKay Trail, and then the Appalachian Trail, and also what I could call the International Appalachian Connector. And now I've started the IAT. Let's see where this takes us. Hopefully to Gaspé in Quebec. Just past the first International Appalachian Trail lean-to. It's literally within sight of the southern terminus. Really nice looking as well. Second IAT shelter. Pretty nice actually. A lot better than a lot of the AT shelters. Very clean. This trail is pretty adventurous, a lot more well marked than I expected. Not necessarily that many markings, but it's marked in the right places. And it goes over these little beaver dams here, which is pretty fun because, of course, the AT cannot do that. The world's most effective horde of mosquitoes has teamed up with the horseflies to drive me insane. Such a relief to be off the AT. Sort of feels like I forgot what real long-distance trails are meant to feel like. This is so much easier, even when it's overgrown. Kind of funny to see this in the middle of the forest. Looks pretty abandoned. You know, it's kind of insane being on one side of Katahdin in the 100-mile wilderness and having all these day hikers, all these people, all these section hikers all over the place on various different trails, not just the AT, and just going for a pretty large distance on the AT just to see what it's like, and then going over the mountain and seeing forest that in my evaluation is just as scenic, and seeing absolutely no one, and seeing all these dilapidated side trails, which clearly probably used to be something, but really have fallen into disrepair. The only trail around here I've seen which seems functional is the IAT, and that has much less visitor traffic clearly than any other trail I followed, pretty much at all, except for maybe the Coosa Trail, the Alabama Trail, at least this year. Not much of a lookout tower. I decided I'm gonna set up inside. Let's give myself a good night's sleep. Not much of a tower, but it's a pretty good view.